Hello and welcome to Retro Retros. So we've got plenty coming up soon, including lots of work on our Volkswagen Transporter T4 camper van. The MOT is tomorrow, and once that's out of the way, we've got loads and loads of work to do on that, which is all going to be great fun, and there's going to be plenty of videos about that coming up soon. But I just wanted to share this with you. We've had this motorcycle here for a little while. Quite a number of years in fact, and we now finally have room in the workshop to be able to get her up on the ramp and do some work to her. The plan is to get her up and running hopefully through the autumn. So as I say, she's been sat here for quite some years and needs some TLC now, and what with the pandemic of 2020, not much has been happening on the riding scene. So let's have a look, see what we've got under here. This particular bike is from 1989 and it's a archetypal red, white and blue Honda, and there she is, RC30. So as I say, she's been under wraps for a little while, but now's the time to get her out and do some little jobs. I think probably needs some work on various sort of seals and gaskets, and I believe, yeah, I think the actual carburetors need going through, as they probably would do in this V4 having been stood for so long. Also the original tyres, the old Metzler tyres are still on there. You can probably see those Mez 2s, so original tyres probably, certainly haven't they were replaced probably in the early 90s at the latest. So it's been a while. I see, just looking at it, that there's some bubbling now of the gel coat, which wasn't there the last time I looked at it. So that's all new to me. It's not desperately bad at the moment, but in some respects that's quite good news, because well, not good news, but I don't have to be woefully precious about it, because I'm looking to ride this bike, not all of the time, but it'd be nice for high days and holidays kind of thing. So what we'll do is I'll get her up on the ramp anyway and give you a proper walkthrough. And so to remove the seat panel, there are 6 screw bolts, 1, 2, 3, and the same on the other side. And then also we use the key to unlock the back pad, which does 2 things really. It enables us firstly to disconnect the wiring harness to the rear lights, so that we don't have to faff around too much and unplug those at that end. Also though, crucially, you'll see the seat mechanism there. If the seat pad is locked and you try to lift the panel, it will get stuck on the seat, so it's like a security thing as well. So make sure that is actually unlocked, and you'll see that it'll start to lift straight away. So it's a bit of a two-handed job, so I'll put the camera down and just lift that away now. The seat unit is now removed, so just a couple of points to mention on that. As we remove the seat, we literally sort of post the seat pad through the letterbox, as it were, that we just had the lock sat in, so that retains, that actually stays on the bike. You can see it's tethered there at one end and also bolted. You could unbolt it from there, it's up to you really, but I've just left it on for now. And yeah, you can see it would be a super clean bike structurally, but there's lots of sort of spider poo and things like that in here, so obviously at some point we'll get all that cleaned up. Another just point to mention, I've put some low tack tape here on the, this is it here, just this low tack tape. It's not gaffer tape or anything like that. It really barely sticks. It's like one of those tapes you use to protect metalwork, stainless steel finishes, stuff like that. You can see it's got no actual adhesive per se, but it's kind of very, very light adhesive, but mostly sort of like a static, so it won't hold anything together, but it protects the paintwork whilst the seat unit is coming in and out. Just protects you from scratching the paint on the tank. That's all that's for, so it won't leave any residue, but quite a useful little tip there. Right, anyway, so here is the seat unit removed. You can see what I was saying about it being so big, because it's basically exposed half of the bike now. So there we go, and that just gives us better access to see kind of what we're up against. I have actually got new old stock brake fluid reservoirs and caps and stuff like that. Any plastic that was kind of aged or deteriorated or discoloured, I have managed over the years to pick up new old stock parts, so I'll be replacing those as we go. Clearly we'll be replacing the rear brake fluid and flushing the brakes and everything else at some point anyway, so that would be the perfect opportunity just to replace things like that. I think the next job really is probably getting the tank off, just so that we got better access to the fuel system and the carburetors, because I fear that's where the problems are going to start. One of the nice things, of course, about restoring and refreshing old bikes and cars is knowing that they haven't been started or messed with for such a long time. So this is if I can do it, it's the reassuring crack of a bolt that hasn't been turned in quite some time. So it certainly hasn't been messed with too much, and it's good fun sometimes to be able to be the first person to go back in quite some years and actually see what we can find underneath. So it's always useful to have the odd magnet around the place to reach hard to reach washers that get left behind and things like that. Of course, there's nowhere to keep your magnet on an RC30, being that the tank is aluminium, as is the subframe and the main frame, so there aren't many places to store it apart from sticking it to your work table. But actually it's also important just to note, make sure that you label up your nuts and bolts or put them back in the holes from which they came, if at all possible, unless it's only a small job. Otherwise we soon find ourselves trying to figure out where on earth something came from, and the last thing we want on a project like this is a magic screw left at the end. So yeah, just keep an eye on that. Just a little thought while I was doing it, please take your time to make sure that you protect any paintwork on any vehicle really, but especially really old, impossible to place parts. I've already loosened this off, but I was in the process of just popping this with the screwdriver because it was on rather tight. It's been on there for years, and I just wanted to show you that you should really protect your paintwork. It only takes a few seconds to do, but if you should slip with your pliers or screwdriver or anything else, then you are probably going to be in a world of pain and regret, and the last thing we want is a dirty great gouge in the paintwork. Yes, there is an argument to say that this should be replaced and may well be replaced anyway, but actually it's in pretty good condition. It's still pliable, not brittle and old yet, so there's no point necessarily cutting it off and slicing it off with a knife just for the sake of doing it. So we'll see how that goes. So next up is to remove the fuel line into the tap there, or out of the tap I should say, and also the vent pipes. So access possibly better from the other side, but either way, just those little clips there and pipes to remove, and then we should be able to pull the tank free. And there they are. So here's your vent pipes, and there's the fuel supply pipe into the carburetors. It's the original line, and again it will probably need to be replaced purely because of its age, although it is still fairly pliable. It was stuck on, so basically to do that there are many ways, but given the tools to hand, just used a small screwdriver as a little pick just to sort of break the seal over the pipe, and then I just ran a tiny bead of WD-40, so like a smart straw type, just almost like you're soldering a copper pipe, just to remove the friction there, and then just some pliers, just to not to rip the actual pipe to shreds, but just enough to give it a little bit of a twist and a pull until it was able to slide free. So that's that then. The tank is now safely off, and we can see, bless her, just needs a good old dust and a wipe. But first we'll now crack the airbox open and find our way down to the carburetors. There are 7 screws, typical Honda airbox screws, M6s. So 1, 2, 3, the same on the other side, plus 1 in the middle. Now, it's the first time I've actually cracked the lid on this since I've had it in all these years, so That may be enough to do it. There may be another screw that I've missed, but we'll have a look. Let's see if we can break the seal. Ah, there it goes. Sounds promising. There it is. Okay, so we'll just lift this. As I say, I've not lifted this yet, so I don't know what condition the filter's in. So there's the lid away. There's the air filter. Smells okay. It's nice and clean in there. Yep, looks good. So we'll remove that just to see what's underneath. We may get as far as taking the airbox lower part out today. If not, we'll just stop and reflect on what we've done so far. But yeah, so far so good. I have just noticed that there is no screw on the end there. It was held in really tightly and nicely with the seal on the inside, but I'm guessing by that thread that there's supposed to be a retaining screw. There isn't one there, but it was held in nice and tightly, so I'll replace that screw next time round. There are no signs of loose screws or bolts inside, so it's not vibrated free, and the mesh is nice and tight there and in good solid condition, so I'm sure it hasn't fallen through into the carbs. I'm sure that's not a problem. With regard to the air filter itself, it's very clean really on the outside, but obviously the important thing is the inside. Hard to tell on the camera in this light, but it's actually pretty clean, but I think I'll end up replacing it. I do have an original OEM. You will see in the right light, I think, that this one here is the original Honda part. Very scarce now, very expensive for the OEM ones. I do have one all boxed up or bagged up, so I may replace it for that, or I may get an aftermarket one for now and keep the other one just as a curiosity, so we shall see. I am working blind on this bike at the moment, so I'm not quite sure of the order of assembly and disassembly, but I noticed there are some tiny screws. I think there's 1, 2, 3, 4 and one on the opposite side, so we'll get those off, which I think will remove this casing here, the black plastic casing. That will probably give me better access to remove this grill. And if this is like the old VF sort of 500 and 750 days, I would imagine we're going to have to pin these little retainers back to access the screws, remove those, and then that will give us the opportunity to remove the top plate with the corresponding sort of connection rubbers and all that entails. So first things first, we'll just have a go. I'm slightly mindful these screws haven't been opened in a long time, if ever. So we've got to make sure that the screwdriver is a good fit for this. I don't want to be rounding these screws off. That's the last thing we need. I might give them a little soak in WD-40 first. So wish me luck. All of those screws are now out. I found that I had to use a long screwdriver in the end to help generate the torque, so I just stood up on top of the ramp. You can see she's off the ground at the moment whilst I'm working at a sort of more comfortable height. Yeah, just stood up there and then used a long screwdriver to really get down. You'd be amazed how much extra torque that gives you actually. So I'll just show you the screws for those ones. So they are special screws. They're threaded part way, and part way they just drop through the plastic lower air box and then thread into the carburetor top plate. So that's how that works. And I think I mentioned that the top airbox screws that retain the cover are M6s. I think actually they're M5 by 0.8 by the look of it. So yeah, so there you go. We can actually check that. I've got a gauge here. I'll do that whilst I'm thinking about it. Just bear with me 1 second. Okay, so here we go. So we've got a gauge, and we can see on here, if it will focus, M5, which it is, and we'll just run that across the thread, and Yeah, that locks in. So that's an M5 by 0.8 for what it's worth. So anyway, that's that done. So that plate will now lift away. So that's the lower air box, and then we've got the grill. So I'll just make a note of how this grill's fitted. I know that's easy, so that just drops in. So we'll have that away as well. So yeah, now here we go then. So this is going to be the fun part. So these can get a bit tricky. So we'll pin these retainers back, and that will leave us with about 8 more screws. I think it's two screws per inlet, and then we should be in business. So there we go. And such is the beauty of doing these videos. I just had a quick change of heart for a second. One of the issues is that at the moment the throttle cable or cables are stuck. There's no sort of push-pull going on. So I wanted to get to the carbs to see if any of them, or which ones were sticking, due to the probably crappy fuel that was stuck in there. So first thing I'm going to do actually is just run some carb cleaner through, see if I can't break the seal of any crusty bits of remnants of fuel that might be holding these barrels and things back. So we're going to try that first and just see how we get on, and then otherwise we're going to have to delve a bit deeper. So having sprayed a little bit of carb cleaner through there and a little bit of persuasion, we've now got free movement. So we'll give that a go in a minute on the other two, and then see if we can turn the cables. In the meantime, I've just lubricated the linkages, and hopefully we'll be good to go. So I can't undo these screws just yet. They're proving rather tight, to say the least. I'm in a different workshop today, so I haven't got access to all my tools, and the last thing I want to do is round these screws off. So I'm going to wait till I've got a decent sort of socket set for these screws, and then we get them out properly. In the meantime, I have just lubricated the linkages as best I can with some WD-40. It's a V4, so of course there's 2 activation bars on there, but what it allows us to do now, at least, is we've now got some throttle action back. I don't know if you can see in there, but there we go. It's not snapping back quite as tight as we'd like at the moment. I mean, there is only the one throttle cable. There's often push-pull cables on these, but this one only has the pull, so it's going to be slightly slower perhaps anyway, but it is retracting. There's full and free, there's full movement there, but it's perhaps slightly more restricted than I'd like, so we will get to that at some point. So I think what we'll do now is just check that the engine is turning over freely. We'll do that manually before we try anything clever like trying to start it up. And there's some quick release fasteners on here, so I think we'll just make a start now and at least remove the lower fairing, and that will give us access to crank the engine manually. And so with the 3 Zeus fasteners removed from each side, plus the bolts, the typical sort of bottom retaining bolts, and 2, I think probably M4 screws just underneath, retaining the front of the belly cowl to the top wing, the top fairing there. She's now dropped loose, so all that remains is to gently spin her from underneath without scratching the bottom too much, and then hopefully we can see what we're up against. I also noticed that things like the coolant have now pretty much disappeared. The clutch is not activating at the moment, so that needs bleeding, I would imagine. So there's going to be plenty of jobs to do, but that's why we're doing this. We're going to start, getting to the bottom of it, and obviously first thing we want to do is try and turn the engine over. So we'll get on with that. So we're just going to turn the engine over manually, just to make sure that nothing's seized or anything. So all we've done is a 17mm socket just to remove the cap there, and the same size on the bolt just there, and we'll just, there we go. You can hear that moving now. You can hear the air through the carbs. Everything's starting to move again now. Obviously there's still a fair bit of compression in there because the spark plugs are still inside. But yeah, that all sounds good and tight there. So I think what we'll do now is just replace this cap for now. Don't forget, of course, to make sure that the O-ring is correctly seated before we screw it back in. And it's quite a relatively fine pitched thread there, so just be careful when you put it back in. And yes, there's other jobs to do now, so we may well change the oil very soon. The spark plugs could probably do with an inspection and a clean before startup. Also need to change the or at least bleed the clutch system. So it's just a case of whether we fire her up as she is, just briefly, and then change everything after. So we'll just give that some thought for a little while, I think. I've just elected to bleed the clutch first. There's no resistance in there at all at the moment to speak of. There's fluid in there, albeit it is old, to be honest. So what we've done is just very quickly hooked up a little bleeding system here. Just a one-way valve, this one, very simple. All we've got to do is collect it in this old battery acid container, always coming useful for that. So yeah, so we've just cracked the rubber bleed nipple cover off, and we'll crack this nut open and see if we can bleed it through, get some pressure back, and of course top it up a little bit. Obviously we'll replace and flush the whole lot at some point, but for now this is just to get it going, just so as we know what we're up against. And if the clutch is operative, it just means that nothing's going to be dragging, and we know, even though the back wheel is spinning freely and it is in neutral, it'd be nice just to know that nothing's binding anywhere. So let's just go and bleed this clutch. So that's the clutch bled. So we've now got feel back at the lever, which is fantastic. It took a little bit of pumping, but we got there in the end. What else can I tell you? So yeah, we flushed the clutch fluid through whilst we were at it, so that's all done. Yeah, brilliant. So it's been a good day. We've got the cowlings off the belly pan there. We've got the tail unit off, of course, and the tank. We've got the air box off. Check the air filter. We have also, of course, let me just come round. Also, just from this side, remove the cover cap and turn the engine over by hand, so we know that that's safe also. What I have done is also connected up a battery. So let's have a look. Will she start for the first time in probably about 8 years, maybe more? Stay tuned. We'll have a look next time on Retro Retros. And thanks for watching. And we'll be back in the next couple of days with the next video. In the meantime, we also have the Volkswagen T4 video to come up. The MOT is tomorrow. We've got the leisure battery and electrical installation to do on that. Please like the video if you have, and also consider subscribing if you'd like more updates on this RC30, the Transporter, the Lancia Delta projects, Fireblades, and all sorts of bits and pieces. And we look forward to hearing from you soon. So take care, and all the best for now.